Hi friends, Father Kerry here, and this is another Holy Spirit moment, this one on the mystical meaning of Christmas, according to the 14th century mystic Meister Eckhart. When I was still an active parish priest, I used to share with my congregation every Christmas the words of Meister Eckhart when he said, "At Christmas time we celebrate the birth of God in the world. But what good is that birth," he said, "if we do not also give birth to God in our souls?" In asking this question, I think that Eckhart strikes at the very heart of what Christmas is. And he also offers us a wonderful insight into the mystical depth of Christianity. He wrote about this in any number of sermons, but there are four in particular, the so-called Advent sermons, in which he tries to explain his meaning. These sermons were probably delivered sometime between 1403 and 1405, when Meister Eckhart was middle-aged. The first of these sermons is the most important, and it's precisely that first sermon whence the question, what good is Christmas if we don't celebrate the birth of God in our souls, is drawn. In that sermon, Eckhart wants to answer three questions. What part of the soul is God born in? How do you and I facilitate that birth? And what are the after effects of that birth? Let's take each of these in turn. First, what part of the soul is God born in? Keep in mind that you and I are made in the image of God. And what that means is that you and I carry around in us a parcel of divine essence. We are not fully divine, of course, but because we're made in God's image, we carry part of that essence within us. It is, if you will, our spiritual DNA. It is the common denominator between us and God. It connects us to God. It is as if what flows through God's essence flows through our tiny bit of divine essence in our soul. Now, what flows through God's essence? This: God is eternally birthing Christ. God eternally breathes forth the Word, the second person. I know you and I speak in temporal terms because we're temporal creatures. And so we say, for instance, in the Nicene Creed, that the Father begot the Son as if it is a once and done deal in the past. But in point of fact, God is not temporal and God is not spatial. God is outside time and space. And so whenever God does something, God does it eternally. Therefore, the breathing forth of the Word, the birthing forth of Christ from God the Father, isn't a once and done deal. It is a eternally present now. And that same flow, that eternal presence, is in us, at least potentially, if we could only realize it. Once again, because our essence is a mirror reflection of divine essence. So, the part of our soul in which God will be born, if God is born in us, is that deep, inscrutable part of our soul that is a mirror of divine essence. Second question: how can we help to facilitate the birth of God in our soul? Meister Eckhart says that you and I are stuck in a buzzin', bloomin' cacophony. The world. We are constantly bombarded by perceptions from the outside world and by thoughts in the inside world. And moreover, you and I are also ego-driven, aren't we? We are creatures who are led hither and yon by our will, our desires, our wants. And as a consequence, we're frequently too busy and too deafened by the din, both interior and exterior, to heed that divine essence within us, which is silent, which is deep, which is still, and which is inscrutable. And so what we need to do in order to facilitate the birth, what we need to do in order to make the potential birth within us become actual, is to detach from all of the noise, from the ego noise, from the will noise, from the external noise, from the internal noise. He has a couple of great words that he uses to describe what the necessary facilitation of the birth of God inside our souls is all about. Abgescheidenheit is one of them, and Gelassenheit is another. Abgescheidenheit can be translated literally as detachment, and Gelassenheit is an interesting word. Gelassenheit can be translated as letting be. What we need to do is to let be, let go, all of the distractions that will detract attention away from the divine essence within, so that we can feel the birthing pangs of God and so that we can cooperate with it. Third question. Once we do this, and we do birth God in our soul, how does it affect us? Well, we've already been affected to a certain extent simply by cooperating with the birthing process. Because Meister Eckhart is quite clear that the only people who can really give birth to God in their souls are people who are good, people who are decent and virtuous, people who try to live holy lives. But once that potential to be a mother of God has been actualized, once we, like the Blessed Mother, have become mothers of God, then we acquire two characteristics with great power and great force. We are humbled and we are able to be altruistic. We are humbled because we recognize what a privilege it is to be allowed to be a God bearer, to be allowed to be a vessel of the birth of Christ. But we are also altruistic in that when we see people now, we recognize that they have the same potentiality to birth God in themselves as we do. That the same divine essence within us, which is a mirror of the divine essence, which in turn eternally gives birth to Christ, is also in them. Whenever you and I meet another person, we should always recognize him or her as a potential mother of God. He or she is a walking Bethlehem stable. He or she has the germination of God within his or her soul. And we should do our best to help him or her recognize that so that he or she likewise can give birth to Christ. I know that it is so hard in this busy Christmas season in the United States, in which we are encouraged to scurry around buying presents and trimming trees and getting ready for the family to come and join us, to focus, to calm down, to be still and silent, to turn inward and get in touch with that divine essence in which the Christ child lies waiting to be born. But according to Meister Eckhart, it is so essential. Otherwise, if we're not careful, my friends, we won't really enter into the mystical depth of the Christmas season. Of course, you and I want to enjoy our favorite carols and love the people whom we love around the Christmas dinner table. Of course, we want to hear the story of the babe born in the stable in Bethlehem. Our hearts yearn for those images and that companionship. But let's not forget, at least says Meister Eckhart, what lies underneath all of that. It is the wondrous mystery that just as God eternally births Christ, so you and I have the potential to birth Christ, because the river of God, the energy of God, the power of God runs through us by virtue of our being made in God's image. My friends, I wish each and every one of you a blessed and joyful Christmas. Take good care of yourselves, love one another, and I will see you again soon.